Welcome to Magnify Your Message. Inspiration magnified.
I have an opportunity to help other people. I have an obligation as a man to talk to men and women, but get men to start talking. And it felt relieving to be able to talk about these things and then get responses.
Welcome to the Magnify Your Message podcast. Today we have someone with us who's a true force in entertainment. He's been behind the scenes of some of the most iconic moments you've ever seen on film. With over 50 years experience as a writer, director, and producer, Emmy Award winner John Callas has done virtually everything there is to do in Hollywood, from working with household names to being featured on Good Morning America himself. This guy has a wonderful and unexpected story that I cannot wait to share with you. Let's dive in. So you know how on interviews when they say, "Oh, my friend so and so is here," and you're like, "Oh, they're friends?" And it turns out they're really not. This is my friend John Callas. I think you're going to regard John as your friend too after hearing this episode. John Callas, thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure.
What a treat. Tell people, who are you? What do you do?
Well, I'm a filmmaker. I'm a director, writer, producer. I've got an Emmy nomination and 8 other award-winning productions. And I'm also a life experience mental health advocate.
Wow. There's a lot there to unpack. Like, man, yeah, how on earth did all this come to be? You want to start with your filmmaking and then go into the advocacy, or you direct us? You're the storyteller. I love it.
Well, we can go either way. I mean, the book When the Rain Stops that I wrote really starts at the beginning from a ghetto kid all the way to a Hollywood director. So I can do either one. I mean, we can go present and then past or past and then present. Um,
Well,
I think
there's
maybe,
this, excuse me.
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say there's a way that Hollywood tells things, which is we as the audience see the polished, perfect version. And I think, as standing on the sidelines, at least before I ever got involved in the industry, you see the finished product, everything that is ready for public consumption. And here you are in that world, creating these beautiful, beautiful stories for the world. And yet there's this story there of your own yet to be told. It's I'm gonna let you, as the storyteller, lead us in any way you'd like.
Fair enough. I'm going to pick up on what you said. When people look at me, they say, wow, I wish I had his career. I wish I had his experience. Look at all the things he's accomplished. And I haven't, I'm very shy about talking about a lot of that. My wife's always saying, come on, you got to talk more about it, a lot. But it didn't come easy for me. It wasn't like, wow, I came to Hollywood and got discovered. I had a very tough beginning to life when my dad died when I was 3. Um, the minute that happened, I felt abandoned, uh, got depression, gave up religion, hated the world, it hated me. And I just got to so much trouble, Cheryl, that by the time I was 12, the courts gave my mother a choice, really. You either send him to military school or we're going to send him to reform school. First night in military school, oh, by the way, my mother put me on a train in New York City alone at 12 years old to go to Virginia. I don't think I've ever been that horrified in my life. I felt like I've got abandoned. My family hated me. They want to get rid of me. All these things that weren't necessarily true, but that's how I was feeling at the time. And when I got to military school, the first night I got knocked out 3 times. Now, granted, I had a mouth on me, so probably part of it was my own doing, but there's this 12-year-old kid just scared to death. Um, and by the time I was 15, in a private school, just wanted the voices to stop. I wanted to not be bullied anymore. Went to the edge of a dock one night and jumped into a semi-frozen lake to kill myself because I couldn't deal with it anymore. And there was sort of an epiphany as I climbed back out, thinking, there's got to be something more to this. I've got to find answers. And that's when I started allowing mentors to come into my life and um, started seeking some answers.
You know, I want to just kind of bounce back and forth between the polished perfection of Hollywood and your actual story. It's given it's what we see is the final ready for consumption project, the polished product rather than the behind the scenes. I think even the behind the scenes looks are polished, right? But I would imagine sharing your own experiences of the kind you're referencing are not done. Is that right? When did you start publicly sharing this? Was it before you wrote your memoir?
Um, Not to the degree that I developed into after the memoir and after, believe it or not, joining Magnify Your Message. I would talk to people and they seemed to always want my advice about things, and I would offer thoughts for them to figure out. And I never gave them therapeutic advice because I'm not licensed to do so, but it just something inside of me felt like I wanted to give back. And it was an opportunity at times I would share a little bit. I wouldn't share my whole story. And they'd say, oh, wow, you went through some serious stuff. And then we would share theirs. And before long, we would talk. And it got lighter and lighter as we went. So I felt I had an obligation almost to put the story out there because, especially men, we just don't talk about our feelings.
Was there a specific moment in time, like a precipitating factor that made you say, now is the time? Or was it just the cumulative effect of these conversations you'd had?
I think it's cumulative from a lot of standpoint. For example, I never played a sport in my life, and the coach in Webster Academy sat me down and said, "Why aren't you playing any sports? Didn't your dad and you play?" And he saw the look on my face, and he got my story out of me basically. And he brought me into the sports world, and I wound up being co-captain of the soccer team, one of the top ice hockey players, undefeated in wrestling. And it wasn't about the sport as much as I found an outlet for my anger. Because out on the field, you could put it all out there. You can run, you can scream, you can fight, you can do whatever within the boundaries of the game, of course. And it gave me relief. So
Mhm.
that was one of the moments where things started going. And my math teacher came to me and said, I get you're having some problems. I said, yeah, I am. He goes, well, you seem to have a problem with authority. I said, I do. I don't like to be challenged in a lot of ways. And he said, I'm going to tell you something about math you might want to think about. I said, what's that? He said, 1 and 1 is 2. I said, what's your point? He said, nobody can argue. 1 and 1 is always going to be 2. So in math, if you want to do it, I'll help you through it. Um, Nobody can argue. There's no subjective, objective. It's the truth, whatever it is. And I became an A student in math because I was so excited to finally find something that I could hold on to. Um, Yeah, and there was another moment in time when I moved to Colorado. I was the last house on the road before the national forest, so there's a lot of healing going on. And met this guy, Mark O'Brien, who's in the book. Um, he sat me down and got my story out of me one night playing chess. And he said, John, I'm going to tell you something. Um, you got to stop thinking you've got to forgive the people you think did you wrong. I said, well, isn't that the right thing? He said, no, you got to learn to forgive yourself. You were a little kid. You were going through some serious stuff and you're beating yourself up over stuff you had no control over. You didn't have any life skills. And then he started teaching me life on a chessboard.
Hmm,
So there were those type of moments that really started developing who I am today.
right. Were you grown at that age when you moved to Colorado?
I was, let's see, around 19, and I
Wow.
left there when I was 23 to come to Los Angeles.
Amazing. You know, you referenced the anger you felt as a boy. And I think at that at those young ages, emotions are, I mean, there's always a complexity to emotions, but emotions are a little more simple, because they're commensurate with our interpretation of the world. You were abandoned, you use that word, by your father. That's a very solid interpretation for a 3-year-old. And then your mother drops you off at the train station. You were, quote, abandoned as a 12-year-old. So there's this theme there, and it's so understandable that your response to that would be anger, right? I mean, sadness or anger, and anger seems like a step up on the emotional scale. There's a little more empowerment to that. I'm not making that up. I saw an author by the name of Dr. David Hawkins once, who wrote a book called Power versus Force, and he talked about the calibration of emotions, and that anger is a more empowered state than feeling victimized by something, for example. So you were trying to empower yourself, trying to make sense of this abandonment, trying to do it, and you did the best you could. What a generous gift that he gave you, courtesy of the game of chess and teaching you how life worked. Did you internalize that? Did you really take it in and forgive
Totally.
yourself?
No, I took it in so amazingly well because it all made sense to me. Because in chess, every move you make, you have to look at what's going to affect the opponent's move. So you learn how to be strategic in your moves, and you learn how to see from different perspectives. And once you can stay away from just your own perspective and you can see another's perspective, then you see the game unfold in terms of a bigger picture. And I applied that to my life as I went through. And I'd always look and say, okay, this is happening. What could happen here? How am I participating? How am I affecting this? And what do I hope for as an end result?
What a brilliant gift to get at age 19, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The ability to see all of it from different perspectives. I have to tell you, some of my fondest memories in life were playing cards with my grandma. She was a real card sharp. She would not take mercy on us. She would take our money. Now it was pennies or nickels or dimes. The ante wasn't huge, but she was always teaching. And she would say, you can never control the hand that you're dealt.
Wow. Good
But so
line.
now what? It seems there's a parallel there with you in the game of chess versus the game of life. How extraordinary. So then, John, at what point did it go from you being mentored to you starting to mentor others?
Well, I think it took a lot of therapy, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm a big proponent of therapy, but I'm also a proponent that you have to set guidelines and uh, benchmarks so that you know when it's time to leave therapy, or that too can become a crutch. So I was fortunate to have a really outstanding therapist. To answer your question, it started with Magnify Your Message because I had spent thousands of dollars trying to promote my book When the Rain Stops and all different platforms. And, I got a little here, a little there. So when I joined the group, I was looking for a way to sell my books. And I mean this with the greatest respect. You guys weren't having that. You saw a mental health expert from life experience that had something more valuable than a book. The book was sort of the blueprint, and it developed into I have an opportunity to help other people. I have an obligation as a man to talk to men and women, but get men to start talking because we were brought up, boys don't cry, suck it up, pull your pants up, get on with it. And it felt relieving to be able to talk about these things and then get responses. I had a veteran write me and say, I am so thankful for your podcast that you've been on because I suffer from PTSD, but I see light now. You've taught me there's a way to get through this. A woman Instagram reached out and I spent an hour and a half on the phone with her. And at the end, she was laughing instead of crying when she joined me and said, my mom's dead, but everything you said felt like you were channeling her. And it was just these kinds of experiences kept me going and wanting to help more and more people. And that's what I did.
Sometimes we need someone to see a bigger picture than we might personally hold,
Yeah.
to really hold that vision. Thank you for being so coachable, so generous. It's an act of true generosity to be amenable to suggestion. So you write this memoir, you put your story on paper. You want to now share it with the world. And now people are actually listening. What are some of the things for you that have been the most unexpected in terms of the impact on those around you and you personally?
Well, I think personally, I stopped trying to figure out what the world owed me. And I started understanding what my limitations were, what my boundaries were, and how to be a whole and healthy person inside. And that takes a lot of work and a lot of digging deep and saying, okay, I may have had these issues in the past, but let's not define or ruin my life based on those issues. So I had to start getting over a lot of things and understanding that I have boundaries. And if somebody crosses it, it's okay to respectfully push back and say, no, that's not acceptable. You can't do that. And once I started learning that, it flipped with relationships because I had a terrible time with women. And one day I was brushing my teeth and I looked in the mirror and said, what is wrong with all these women? What's the common denominator? And I cracked up laughing, Cheryl. I said, the guy in the mirror is the common denominator, not the women. It's you. And so I sat myself down and I started thinking about, okay, what is it that you're doing? And I realized it was a matter of me looking at women saying, well, what can you give me? How are you going to help me? Where's the love from me? And I said, let's back up and flip that switch around. And I started thinking, what is it you're willing to give? What are you comfortable giving? And if you find a symbiotic person that accepts that and their needs meet your needs, all of a sudden you have a really solid partnership. And so after dating so many women, I met my now wife, and it was like I learned unconditional love from her because she wouldn't give up on me. Um, and she showed me it was safe to express my emotions. And it opened up a whole new world for me.
Wow, talk about an act of generosity to it's in a world of finger pointing to claim ownership over something like that that's so uncomfortable. I was on the freeway the other day and I was driving between like an hour and a half drive on the freeway, South Orange County to Los Angeles.
Ooh,
If any, if you know where that is. But the point is it's largely urban and suburban area with a lot of billboards. And I counted 17 billboards as soon as I started to become aware of them. All personal injury law. All somebody
uh,
saying, you did this to me and you sons of guns should pay for it. And and a cheeseburger ad. It was like 17, these bad guys need to pay, and a cheeseburger. And that says so much about the time in which we're living. It
yeah.
isn't me, it's not my responsibility. It's all these women out there. You know, it's all the other guys that are doing it to me. And particularly after that very young foundational age where you felt rightfully so abandoned, to then say, nah, it's the guy in the mirror. It's truly the ultimate act of generosity to say, no, I'm going to own this. It's all me. It's just
I
not
have
what's
to live with
generally
me.
done.
And if I'm not comfortable in my own skin, nobody's going to want anything to do with me.
Wouldn't it be a different world if we all could just
Oh,
own
God,
that?
yes.
There's a beautiful tenet with regard to personal responsibility that I heard once. I was one of the things I did to overcome the impact of the kidnapping was take personal development seminars. And in this particular one at the Landmark Forum, they were saying that 50% ownership is a lie. And it was like, okay, wait, what? Keep going. They said, you know, in relationships, we're usually like, hey, I keep my side of the street clean. This is the end of my side of the street. All that crap over there is yours, and you're not keeping your side of the street clean. Now, obviously, it's so arbitrary, right? Like, what is the side of the street? There's no real such thing in a relationship, right?
Right.
And they said the only model that actually works is 100% responsibility. I'm 100% responsible for the way it all goes. And then ideally, the other person too will say, I'm 100% responsible. But even if they don't, even if you've got some old curmudgeon who's taking 0% responsibility, the tenant went, that you could still have extraordinary relationships because you were willing to own, hey, it's all me. And I bring that up, John, because your epiphany, that moment in the mirror, brushing your teeth, saying, no, it's the guy in the mirror, reminds me of that. That's an extraordinary place to stand.
Those are very difficult admissions to make. And I made a deal with myself prior to that, that would be honest with myself, and felt I wasn't being. And it came back to bite me, but I was happy that it did. I love what you said about 100% relationships because it triggered something that my wife and I talked about once, which I wrote an article on. Happy wife, happy life. And I got into this conversation about that with a bunch of people, and I said, no, it's wrong. They said, what do you mean? If your wife's happy, you're happy. I said, no, that's a hostage situation. That's not a partnership. And they said,
Mm,
well, what do you suggest? I said, how about happy house, happy spouse? Now you're
yeah.
both are partners. You know, it's you can't just become a servant to somebody else, their emotional needs, their needs, and all that, where you've just become useless. So yeah, I think it has to be 100%, as you said. That was really cool.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Whew. Happy house, happy spouse. I love it. It sure beats the hell out of the old, hey, all these bad guys out here are to blame, and I'm gonna make you pay for it.
A lot of
So
wives didn't like that comment because they wanted to be the queen, you know. I want to be happy. Well, you're happy. Make him happy too. Let him be happy. You know. Anyway, it was a funny conversation.
it sounds like it. It sounds like a really important conversation to have. And on that note, that's who you are. It's you are one who doesn't shy away from the real conversations.
No,
At one point, I recall you saying that you were talking to people in Hollywood, and I don't know if this is after you released your memoir or before, but started talking to people on set about that which matters most to them and their own mental health. Would you share with everyone about that? I found it so inspiring.
sure. Actually, it was coinciding with me writing the memoir. And what I did when I was coming up through the ranks is I saw how directors and producers treated crews, and I wasn't going to have a part of that. I said, "This is the wrong way." I mean, a director, I was his assistant director, came up to me and said, "You're not doing a good job." I said, "Oh, okay. Tell me what I could do to improve." He goes, "You got to scream at your crew. You got to keep yelling at them to get them to work." And I looked and I said, I'm going to make you a deal. He said, what's that? I said, pick out any member of this crew that isn't working their butts off right now, and I'll go punch him in the face. He goes, that's not the point. That's not the point. I said, no, it is exactly the point. Yelling at them is only going to frustrate them, and then they're going to freeze, and then they're going to wonder, maybe I should be moving for no reason. Somebody's going to get hurt. I'm not going to do it. You can fire me, do whatever you want, but I'm not going to do it. So when I realized the impact of that, when I started becoming a director and a producer, I went to crews and they started understanding that I really cared about how they felt. I mean, I took money out of my pocket and got everyone a cappuccino one set, and they went, "This came out of your pocket?" I said, "Yeah, why?" said, okay, you're an odd one. And it reminded me of the very first time I was an assistant director that I got asked to do that. I called the crew together and I said, I'm your assistant director. And everyone went like this. Oh, God, is he going to be a screamer? What's the speech here? I said, I'm going to be really transparent with all of you. I haven't got a clue what I'm doing. And they all looked at each other. And said, what? I said, I need your help. I really need to know how to be an assistant director so I can make your jobs easier. I can run the set better. And we all can just keep moving forward without screaming and craziness. And they all just like circled me. They said, I've never had anyone do that. And so they were teaching me and all that. So the first day on the set, I'm looking around and one of the guys goes,
He
oh
goes,
yeah,
what?
roll
Oh,
sound.
roll sound. For any of you just listening to the
And the
audio,
other guy,
John
the
is
other guy goes
mouthing.
like this. I said, oh yeah, roll camera.
Roll
And
camera. John is pantomiming rolling the sound and the old hand cranked camera. If for those of you who are just listening to the audio podcast, that's hysterical. They all gave you their best,
yeah, they
best
did. And
advice and best, it sounds like.
there was also a confirmation in life that it's okay to ask for help. There's nothing wrong, nothing embarrassing about it, and nothing demeaning to yourself. If you get the help and it improves you, look at what value you've gotten.
Man, that is the most masculine, certain thing I've ever heard. Now, that might fly in the face of what people go, "Oh, well, masculinity." It's having the spine, the backbone, the courage to go, "I am doing it this way. This serves people. I don't care what people think." That is so courageous in service of people. Wow, I'm blown away by you, John Callas.
I,
Huh.
I do have a cute story that I don't really tell often.
Please.
Um, my wife was on a set with me because she became part of my wardrobe department. And the crew was talking, said, hey, have you worked with Callis before? And they go, no, but I really like this. And they said, Linda, did you work with Callis? And and do you know him? She goes, well, yeah, I kind of know him. I said, how do you know him? I said, well, he's my fiance. And they all went, no kidding, really? Can you give us like any pointers how we can stay on his crew and all this? And she came home that night. She was just so full of pride. She goes, I can't believe how people talk about you. They all want to bend over backwards for you. What are you doing? Are you feeding them something in the food? What's going on? I said, no, Linda, most of these people, when I first started, challenged me saying, I think you have more money in the budget for us. And I think you're like all the other producers. And I said, hold on. I went in the room. I brought the budget out. I threw it on the table. I said, there's the budget. No producers are ever going to let you see it, but there's the budget. You look up your rates, you look up my rates, you look up everyone's rate and what's going on in that budget. And you'll find out that the truth is in there. And one guy went over, he looked, he goes, he's right. After that, I could call a crew. If their rate was, let's say, 350 a day, I can call and say, hey, look, I got this really lean thing. I can only pay 250. If you don't want the job, John, stop talking right there. When do we start? Because they knew if I had the money, they would get it. They would have overtime. And one of my other producer buddies said, what's with this overtime with you? I said, what do you mean? If they work overtime, they're deserving it. He says, yeah, but you can bring the budget down. I said, no, you're forgetting something important. So what's that? I said, these people have families. They got to put food on the table. And that overtime is actually more important than the day rate because that's the gravy, so to speak. And I'm not taking that away from them. I just won't do it.
Mm. You know, I yesterday I had an interview with a woman who's a divorce attorney who is committed to bringing calm to that time of life for people if they are touched by divorce. And the statistics today are everybody's going to be touched by divorce. It really seems, with the divorce statistics being what they are, whether it's their family was a family that was broken through divorce, or they themselves, or someone they know, or a family member. And she's committed to bringing calm and dignity in the face of it. And I have to say, I was kind of fangirling a bit because I'd gone through a really awful divorce that took 4 times as long as the marriage. Thought, what? And the bills that I paid at the end, it was just it was disheartening and heartbreaking to me. But as I listened to her talk about the dignity and respect that she does the process with, as an attorney, I was kind of fangirling over her, and I thought, you know, I say that to say my response to you is the same thing. Celebrating what celebrating the everyday, celebrating doing the right thing, celebrating bringing dignity and honor to interactions with people. And that may seem a silly, pedantic, pedestrian thing to celebrate, but it's I grew you and I are from the same generation. I grew up living with my grandma for a while. She's, you know, she was old school, God bless her, because of when she was born. But she taught me, my parents taught me, you do the right thing even when no one's looking. And back to the billboards on the freeway, always looking to make somebody else pay for your lot in life. That seems to be so pervasive in the zeitgeist today. I think it's worth celebrating people doing good, whatever it is, like you granting people overtime or showing them the budget to be transparent and letting them know that your motives are pure and true. And maybe we celebrate the everyday here, but I'm going to damn well continue to do that because I think it matters. You know, we all have different beliefs and personal values or places that we fall in the political spectrum these days. And I think it's more important than ever to be good humans and to love and accept one another.
Yeah. You do that in all of your programs that you have. I mean, you guide people into making good decisions. And I've heard you say it more than once. It's not about me, it's about you. You have to give them value. And that just, when I heard that the first time, I'm like, oh, I'm in the right place. This is exactly where I need to be. Because that's what it's all about, is if you find a way to offer value, it's going to come back to you. It may not come back like in the way you want, but it comes back.
It's such a myth. I mean, this is not, you know, this podcast isn't about Magnify Your Message, the program, but I did want to say something that I think is really relevant to what you just said, John.
Okay?
So many people reach out to us and say, I want to get on TV. Oh, okay, great. Why? Because I want to talk about how good my business is. You know, they built a better mousetrap. And I get that. I understand why you want to serve more people if you do good work. But what people fail to understand is that that's not what works in major media, and no TV production company is going to call you, or a major media platform is going to bring you in to talk about how great your shoe insoles are, or new method of providing uh, cardiac care, or whatever you do. They're going to bring you in because you provide real, actionable value for their audience. And I wish I could help people understand that rather than trying to make it about you, make it about the audience. That's why, John, you get invited back again and again to do interviews, because you provide levity and lightness and pathos and all of it at the same time. You're such a beautiful storyteller, but people always leave better and bigger for having heard your story.
That's quite a compliment, Cheryl. Thank you. But you do, in fact, teach us how to do that, how to give value. And once you get somebody off top dead center about, I want to show you my better mousetrap, and they rejig their thinking, it's like with my kids. What I teach them a lot is when I hear them saying, "Well, I can't afford that," I say, "Stop. That's a poor person thinking." So what am I supposed to say then? I said, "Well, I want to get this car, so I have to figure out a way to earn the money in order to get the car. Not I can't afford it, because I can't afford it means you'll never get that car. But saying I'm going to save, I'm going to figure out how to get it. You're a rich person in your mind, and that you'll materialize."
Oh, I love that. It's a perspective shift, just like chess. Whoa.
I knew we'd get back to chess somehow. That was a queen to bishop four. Good for you.
My Nana taught me well, John Callas.
Yes, she did.
Oh, so John, what else would you like to leave us with today?
Actually, I would like to leave a perspective with everybody. And I'm going to use my experience with my mother so you can understand what I'm going at. When you're growing up and you're going through all these traumas and stuff, your perspective is real and it's painful. And nobody can take that away from you. When I got on the train and we started pulling out, my mother literally turned away and walked away. At that moment, I felt like the whole world had collapsed on me. My truth was my mother hated me. She turned away, walked away, and abandoned me. When I got to be an adult and I sat down with my mother, we talked about that moment. And she started crying. She said, "Oh, honey, you have it all wrong." I said, "What do you mean, Mom? You turned away." She goes, "I turned away because I was crying my eyes out that I was letting my little 12-year-old boy go. And I had no choice. And I felt a failure as a mother." Well, 10 minutes later, when we stopped crying, we hugged each other and it was an epiphany. And that's when I realized the truths we often live with may not be the real truths. And we need to learn to look at the perspective, again, chess, from other viewpoints so that we can maybe uncover what those truths really are. Once you understand that, then you can find a path to your recovery and moving forward with your life. And I think it's an important perspective to have.
Those things that have shaped us that we thought were intractable truths ain't necessarily so.
Exactly.
What a gift, John. Thank you for the perspective shift that you provide. How can people learn more about you, purchase When the Rain Stops, get in touch with you, etc.?
Okay, so When the Rain Stops is on Amazon, but if you do When the Rain Stops, please put in John Callas because other books come up and stuff. I have a website, johncallas.com. It has an email address. More than welcome to reach out to me through that. And if you need to talk, let's talk. I'm available. I can't give you a licensed therapist viewpoint, but I can tell you my experience. And more importantly, I want to hear about your experience and let's deal with what you're going through and see what we can do about that.
Fantastic. I will make sure that all the links are in the liner notes of the episode. Any
Appreciate
final
it.
thing
Thank
you'd
you.
like to leave us with today, John?
Something you said earlier, wouldn't the world be better off if we stopped all this hatred and division and started thinking about each other? It's not that hard to do. It's just much easier than screaming and hollering and finger pointing. Look, I'm a hippie, so I'm going to just say it the way it is. Let's bring back peace and love. I mean, there's nothing better than that. It was a time in my life during the hippie era that I actually felt the world was a beautiful place. Now I'm scared of it. I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, politically, yeah, economically, everything. But I keep going back to what's the fundamental here? Peace and love, peace and love, peace and love. I'm not using it as a cliche. I'm using it as a mantra in a sense. And I wake up every morning and I look around and I thank God for the next day. And when I go to bed, I thank him for all the gifts that I've got, not what I want, but what I have. And that's kind of given me a very peaceful mindset.
I love it. Thank you. Let's leave it right here on peace and love. How can I bring more peace and love to today, to
There you go.
everyone with whom I interact? Yes. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Cheryl. You gave me a lot, believe me. You have no idea what a great influence you've been on me.
And that brings us to the end of today's episode of the Magnify Your Message podcast. What an incredible conversation. John Callas shared some powerful insights from his remarkable 50-year career in entertainment. I hope you found his story as inspirational and helpful as I did. To learn more about John, just click the links in the episode notes. I'm Cheryl Hunter, and this is the Magnify Your Message podcast. Join us next time. If you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, and share this episode with everyone that you feel it would benefit. Thank you in advance. And when you're ready to share your story and your work with the world, I can help. Visit CherylHunter.com to learn how. I am Cheryl Hunter, and until next time, know that your message has the power to change the world.